I recently restarted and finished *Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Reading about such a vast time frame of human history, I realized something interesting. Most of our beliefs and systems, including the ones about money, time, and science, are extremely new, a few hundred years old at most, compared to the 200,000-year-long history of our species. That's only the blink of an eye. So I started thinking, what beliefs and systems related to entrepreneurship that we take for granted today didn't exist until a few hundred years ago? Answering this question widened my perspective on earning money, making discoveries, and understanding society, perhaps the most important part of entrepreneurship. 3 ideas from the book *Sapiens* that took my perspective of entrepreneurship to the next level. Admit your ignorance. As entrepreneurs, we tend to value what we know more than what we don't. We are scared that people are going to figure out that we don't know stuff. But apparently, admitting how little we know can lead to immense wealth and power. The book explains this by telling the stories of a few empires. For most of history, empires thought they already understood the world. Think of Arabs, Mongols, Romans, and Aztecs. Sure, these empires were interested in new lands, but they utilized conquests to gain power and wealth, and only those two. They were not interested in learning something they didn't know about the world. This changed with the European imperialism, specifically Captain Cook's expedition to Tahiti. Both scientist and conqueror began by admitting ignorance. They both said, "I do not know what's out there." They both felt compelled to go out and make new discoveries. The British wanted to know how far the sun was from the Earth. They sent a team of experts off to Tahiti to observe the next Venus transition. The team was led by the experienced seaman, Captain James Cook. The duration of the Venus transits would allow the scientists to calculate the distance between the sun and the Earth. The expedition lasted 3 years, but its only yield was not the distance between the sun and the Earth. Sure, they were able to calculate that as well, but the team also brought back an unprecedented amount of knowledge: astronomical, geographical, meteorological, botanical, zoological, and anthropological knowledge from all of the lands they discovered, including several Pacific islands, Australia, and New Zealand. All they needed to do was to admit they knew nothing about those lands, and thanks to admitting this, they were able to get there. The success of this expedition gave the British a strong hand at the sea, laying the foundation for the British to occupy a huge part of the world. Admitting ignorance led to the building of the largest empire history has ever seen. As an entrepreneur, I feel scared to ask the questions I don't know the answers of. And also, listening without approval or bias feels difficult too. I first recognized the power of listening when I was conducting a research for my master's thesis. To run a proper verbal research, I was supposed to ask open-ended questions and listen without approving the answer or even nodding. I wasn't supposed to say a word, not to influence the answers. As entrepreneurs, especially before our product finds its place in the market, the data that we can collect from people by just asking questions and listening without interruption is mind-blowing. To be honest, it's not much different than collecting saliva or blood from people. We just need to get out of the way the data flows towards us. Only by admitting we don't know anything in the beginning can we truly understand the people that we want to build a business for. School teaches us the importance of knowing it all. The mental model the British introduced to the world, which eventually led to scientific discoveries and immense wealth accumulation, was admit your ignorance. Time is a new thing. We check the time hundreds of times in a day. Wake up at 7, join a meeting at 9:15. Were you 5 minutes late to your appointment? It feels like the end of the world, right? As an entrepreneur, I kind of feel guilty when I'm not working in the 9 to 5 time frame. Most of my friends are at work. Especially as a mom working from home, honestly, I squeeze in work just whenever I can. Sometimes that's at 7 a.m. when I still have crusts in my eyes, and sometimes it's at 10 p.m. drowsy after putting my toddler to bed, tired of all the singing singing and storytelling. Our watch interferes with the way we value our work way too much. But did you know that watches didn't even exist until 1800s? If a lost time traveler popped up in a medieval village and asked a passerby, "What year is this?" the villager would be as bewildered by the question as by the stranger's ridiculous clothing. For hundreds of thousands of years, movements of the sun and the growth cycle of plants were enough for people to live their lives. They did not need calendars, clocks, or watches. Most cities had a few sundials or clocks at most. Nobody cared about what time of the day it was. This all changed with the Industrial Revolution. The modern assembly line required workers to be at their spots, operating their machines at the same time. If one worker stalled, the entire production line would get interrupted. That's why each worker needed to be at work at the same time, meaning they needed to wake up, have breakfast, commute, get into work, have lunch, leave work, have dinner, and go to bed at around the same times. For the same reason, the public transportation needed to run more precisely. If factory shifts were going to start at 8 in the morning, all the workers had to get on the train at a precise time. But there was a problem. Up until 1880, cities used local times instead of national times. This changed in 1880. Britain became the first nation to adopt a national time for the trains to run more efficiently. The 8-hour workday is a construct. So is the necessity for everyone to wake up, go to work and get back home at the same time. It was one of the ways the Industrial Revolution influenced our societies. Today, most production systems are automatized. Most intellectual work runs asynchronously. So it might be a good time to rethink our relationship with time, rethink how its measurement leads our life. Egoism is altruism. For the vast majority of history, wealth was seen as something filthy, selfish, and mean. As Jesus said, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. How many of us are comfortable sharing our income or our wealth? When I occasionally see Twitter friends being transparent about their income, it feels so refreshing. Not many people are comfortable with this because mainstream opinion on money is something like it needs to be kept a secret. But what if something perceived as egoistic as money could be framed as something altruistic? In 1776, economist Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, forever changing the perception of wealth. According to Smith, if an entrepreneur made profits, they could hire more assistants. The more profits the entrepreneur made, the more assistants they could hire, thus creating wealth not only for themselves, but for many others. Becoming richer means creating a bigger pie. Bigger pie yields bigger results for everyone. It's a win-win. Of course, this idea is only valid if the entrepreneur is willing to reinvest their profits back into their business. In medieval times, rich people consumed extravagantly. They wore expensive robes made of gold and silk, spent much of their time partying, and lived in castles and palaces. The modern rich don't consume remotely as much. Yes, they live in good houses, they drive expensive cars, and they do wear designer clothes. But the majority of their wealth is put back into their business as a reinvestment. For today's entrepreneur, this comes in the form of hiring a team, delegating workload, investing in systems and technology, and spending money on making our products and services better. What seems like an egoistic ambition ends up being a win-win for many. I have a tough relationship with money. I was never taught how to go out there and earn it. I was given all the tools to get the highest grades in my class and get a well-paying corporate job, but earning money with my bare hands seemed kind of like an off-road territory for me. Most of us are taught to be frugal. Not many of us are taught how to hunt in the wild, figuratively speaking. Earn and reinvest our money back into the business. If earning money, being open about money, and making people's lives better with money were more common topics, I bet more people would try their hands at it. Of course, aiming for constant growth can feel toxic, and it can feel overwhelming for beginning entrepreneurs like me. But the idea to reinvest earnings into the business, especially when framed as something altruistic, will lead to a purposeful life. It's interesting that this thought has been around for only a few hundred years. No wonder society's thoughts on money have not fully evolved yet. Alright, that's a wrap for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you can, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!